all of the work we do is kind of, it's not behind the scenes because that's not really the plan, but our main thing is kind of to emphasize and make the projects and the clients we work with better, or kind of stronger. So I don't think that it necessarily in the beginning was the plan that we didn't want to be kind of fronting anything, but then there's it's kind of nice not to be the face of something and also to talk about it too much. And then at the same time, just actually the most rewarding thing is to do an amazing project and then go home at like 6 o'clock. If we've done a show, then when all the other ones start sipping champagne and then they have to go to a dinner and then go to a party, then we can kind of sneak out the back door and then give a high five to our team and then actually let them go to bed if they want to. It's like, I don't think when I was working at Acne for 10 years, that was all about representing and kind of being out there. Not that we were ever it was only Johnny that was doing all the interviews and like one spokesperson, but it was just more that we were so much more of a face because we're building a brand. I like that we don't have to be the ones getting on stage and performing like that, but just kind of doing what we want. And at the end of a production day, we need to do something else, maybe ahead of the next day, or go to another project. So I think, so I think like that, it just became this thing where we don't really do that much. And then we also, the less we do, the more complicated we are to find and to look up. And then people we don't spend a lot of time on talking on new biz projects where people call us up, because that also takes a lot of time.
Right. Yeah. I think I heard, I don't know if you're familiar with the music producer Rick Rubin.
Yes.
But somebody asked Rick Rubin, like, how do you kind of start working with a new band or artist? And he's like, I'm not on any record label's list. Like, I work for myself. So like, in order to get in touch with me, you basically have to seek me out. But I think that's a great way once you can get to that point, right? I think that's an interesting way of working. That way you can just keep it tight. You know, you can like work with the people you want to work with. You're not having to be like a salesperson.
No, exactly.
You know,
and I think,
all day.
I mean, when you run an agency or if you're a consultant, then the most important thing is to be there for the ones that you're working with right now or doing a project that's going on. So I think that's where, if you kind of have to deal with all the other stuff, then that's not so easy. So I think in that sense, it's like, I would actually prefer that I didn't need to have a computer. And it's like, we have an info mail address. I haven't checked it for 2 years. I think we have also, we have like, but then it's like, at the other hand, it's like, I put my number, my direct phone number is on the website. So it also challenges people. They have to call me. And then they'll get a voicemail that says, I'm not going to listen to the voicemail because I hate that. And if they need to get in touch with me, they have to send me a text, which means they have to tell me what they want for me to call them. But it's kind of the opposite, because it's not trying to be arrogant. It's just trying to be specific or concrete or whatever. So I think because we are kind of, we want to be nice people and we want to be nice to whoever reaches out, but they also have to want to do it a little bit more than just kind of sending a random email that they've sent to 5 other people that might kind of pick up on it and start working with them as well. So I think, I like the Rick Rubin kind of style with that as well. So my direct phone number is in the latest publication we did as well. So if you get to the end of the last page, my number is there, people can call me, but they have to look up the new, like the magazine, go to the final page.
That's great.
So we're approachable in an unapproachable way. I guess that's the plan.
Right. I think for the next time you do that, you should make it like a lottery ticket where you've got to scratch off the top with a coin or something. Make them work a little harder.
Yeah, but the crazy thing is, because sometimes then you do these things, because when we put out the last magazine, then suddenly my phone started ringing, and I don't pick up on numbers I don't know, because then they ruin the plan of the day, right? The same as a voicemail. So that means that suddenly my phone started calling, and then after a week I was like, I have so many random phone calls from people, and then I realized somebody in my office said, yeah, it's because you put your number in the magazine. It's probably why people started calling. So it's a little bit, sometimes we forget about these small Easter eggs we put in, and then they don't even add any value. So the best thing we did once was that we did with Space Magazine, we did an auto generated email where, where like you can write all the text out. And then when people kind of take it, then it would take your exact text that you put in, and then it would come back to us. So suddenly I started getting these emails that were all the same, and they were all because somebody pushed a link, and then it would say, "Hey, I love Space Magazine. I want to advertise. Send me everything. I'll transfer the money," or something like that. We thought it was fun. And then one day I come to the office and I asked the guy that knows something about IT, and I'm like, I think I'm getting spam because I get these emails that are exactly the same, all of them. And then he was like, that's weird. And then we didn't do anything about it. And then a couple of months later, we were like, fuck, that's all the advertising emails we send out to people. They actually replied and they wanted to advertise, but we forgot about it because we thought it was spam. And then,
oh no.
So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, going back to what you said about the phone calls kind of changing the course of your day, how strict are you about a schedule? And I guess how disciplined are you about your daily schedule?
I think I'm pretty tight to it, actually. I mean, we also how we run the agency is that we open the office at 9 and we close it at 5. And we don't want our team to be in earlier or to kind of work after 5. So, and we try to not put any productions on weekends or nights or anything, because we want people to live in kind of a normal life in that sense and actually have time with the kids and do all these things. So that also means that when we're in the office, and it's like we stick to the schedule, and then we have I've had it in my schedule for quite some time. I'm not great at it, but actually it says on Fridays, it says in yellow, it says moon slack, which means I'm not supposed to book any meetings on Fridays, which means I can be busy the first 4 days. And then the Friday should be in the office with no meetings, only having internal, not meetings, but just sit downs with the creatives as well. So we try to do it. We're not great at it, but it means that we're definitely trying to have a system where kind of nothing comes in from the side. And of course it does from time to time, but I think that also comes with working with less clients and just doing it deeper, means that we have to be more into it as well.
Is that kind of balance or harmony between work and life, is that something that is important to you, or culturally, like, is it a Danish thing to kind of like have this really strong sense of harmony?
I think maybe it's kind of a Scandinavian mentality, maybe from as a starting point as well. I think one of why we really emphasize it, and also, I mean, I started the company with Frederik, so we've been best friends for the last 20 years, and so we kind of built it on the basis of us being best friends. Both of our wives also works in the company. My wife runs kind of the office management, and she works 4 days a week and just a couple of hours. And then Emily is also creative director, Frederik's wife, and works on styling and collection development and all these different things. But it means that we have our wives working with us within the team of 10 people in total. So we want to make sure that also gives us the best kind of platform for running the family life that we want to. And then one of the ambitions has definitely been to have people working for a very long time. We have one guy that's been with us for 10 years. He's just getting his 3rd kid now. So we also want to make sure that you can do this and still have a kind of an ambitious family life. For the last 2 years, he's only been working until 2 or 3 every day, so he could kind of get home in time with the small kids and spend time with them. So the most important person and the most creative person we have in the team can still be on reduced hours and then still do what he needs to do. So I think it's super important for us. And actually, we saw that during COVID, that a lot of people were kind of gravitating towards working in parts of the world where it didn't mean 12-hour work days and kind of just an email open all the time. So I think what we saw after COVID was we're getting approached by a lot of people that wanted to work a little bit differently. And I think that balance became more important for a lot of people the recent years as well.
Yeah, that's interesting because I've been thinking about this recently, and maybe it's because my son, who just turned a year old, we're like looking at daycares and thinking about schools and different things. But the school system, at least in the US, is like you go to school at, I forget if it was like 8:00 or something, and then you stay till 3. But when you look at like a homeschooling schedule, they're really just like, with the kids actually going through math or science or whatever for only a few hours of the day. And then a lot of the rest of the day is going to like, social events or like going to play outside or whatever. But I was thinking about how schooling works and maybe how that sets up the rest of our life and like how we think about work, which is like, I have to clock in at 9 and then I stay till 5. But then a lot of those hours end up being wasted. And so if you're doing what you're doing, which is like being really careful about not scheduling too many meetings, like getting, if you're working for 4 hours a day, but you're getting like the most out of those 4 hours, that might be the same as somebody who's staying all day, but they're constantly getting distracted by small meetings or whatever else.
I think at least it's like, I think one of the things, I think sometimes people think that we're a little bit like weird when it's like, but we don't, when people come in on Monday morning, for example, when they come into the office, we spend 2 seconds. I don't even think that anybody says, did you have a nice weekend? It's not that people don't care, but actually it's like we've made this system where people come to the office because they love working on the projects we do there. And that's what we have together. We don't have, it's not that we dislike each other or anything. Everybody loves working together, but we don't have a social life that we want to cater for together. Because for us, actually, working together is what we want out of it. So I think we're pretty efficient in that sense because so people come in at 9, they have a coffee, and then they start being excited about something we're going to do or work on together. So instead of talking about what they did, how they were drunk on the weekend or whatever they did, it's not that we kind of like, we don't want that, but we try to just have a organic group of people that love working together. And I think I often reference Paul Smith said that he doesn't like the icing on the cake, he likes the cake. I think that's the same for us. It's like we just like that, we love that, and the more we can do in a day, the better. And so that's actually what's important for us as well.
Yeah, it sounds like you're creating an environment that you want to be in, and it's probably helpful to have the family aspect because it creates a really strong boundary, and you have kids too. So, you don't want to both be at the office till, midnight working on a shoot or something.
No, exactly. And I think actually to a question like on work-life balance, I think for us, it's like there's only one life. So in that sense, it's like there's work and there's kind of life. And I think what we just want to make sure that it integrates well, and whatever that means, because obviously you have a 1-year-old. I mean, mine is 7 and 17. So it's different kind of times you go through. So you also need to spend the attention at the time where your kids actually want to hang out with you. And then there's another time where they don't need you at the same. So I think it's also, you're going to work for an entire life as well. So I think there'll be plenty of time to be more invested. And I think, the same way as you travel, it's like, I love traveling because then I have all the time to do it. So it's like, so if I travel quite a lot. So it's like, so then I'm super efficient on an entire day if I'm out anyways, and then try to be that. But then I don't put the same schedule in for when I come back. I might still be in the office from 9 to 5, but I'd much rather, it's like if I'm away on one day, I'd much rather put in a late meeting on a phone at 8 o'clock if I'm anyways waiting at an airport. So I think we just try to be smart with that as well. So it doesn't spread out, but just being kind of very specific when the time allows as well.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I'm curious, Martin, about your beginning. I mean, take me back to, you grew up in Copenhagen, right?
Yes. Oh no, I didn't grow up. I actually grew up in the countryside. So like in Jutland.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me about like growing up, and what kind of kid were you?
I think if you grow up like in these small cities, you play sports usually. So I sucked at football or soccer, so I didn't do that for long. I ended up playing a lot of handball and was pretty good at that, which was like you could either do that or play soccer. So I think that, and then I kind of went to school. Just did like business college. I think that's probably what it is, for like a 3-year diploma thing after school. And then, because when you live in these smaller cities, at least here, you always know that you will need to move eventually, because unless you want to be kind of part of the scenery there. So my plan was basically to finish school and then go to university and then actually study law, which is very different from what I ended up doing. But then, but I always worked in next to school, I worked in a fashion store, kind of classic menswear, but still doing like the Diesel and Levi's and like these kind of things. So there was a little bit of more youth culture in that, but it was great working next to going to school as well. And then actually there was a small, very weirdly, because there was this Acne Studios distribution was because they were from Sweden. They were kind of big in Sweden and then had some stores in Denmark and sold to some stores in Norway as well. And in my city, there's like 7,000 people living. There was very weirdly a store selling Acne jeans at that time. So, which was in 99, 98, which was like the year after it kind of launched. So I started getting a little bit of these kind of different kind of brands into my radar as well. And I kind of like that, but the plan was still to not kind of pursue fashion in any way. And I didn't really know what that would be like anyway. So, but then just when I was finishing college, I crashed a car that I just had my driver's license. And then a week later, I went into an accident and crashed a car and got like a whiplash. Which meant that I couldn't go to university straight away because I ended up being 10% disabled from like a spine thing that nothing serious, but just that my concentration level wouldn't be able to kind of pursue a university thing. And then I switched path, and then I decided to kind of go into fashion instead. So I went to London. Was supposed to work over there, but just ended up staying with some friends, spending all my money until my bank called me and said I should probably go home and find a job. And then since I didn't have a proper education, I took this 2-year retail trainee where you could kind of work in a store and then kind of get that that kind of diploma where you kind of you'll be trained in fashion retail or something, right? So I did that for 2 years. And ended up becoming pretty ambitious. I think I kind of ended up surpassing the store manager because I didn't think he was great enough. So I applied for the job even before I was kind of done with my trainee thing, and I wanted his job. And then I kind of got that. And then some of the people, I was working for Energy and Miss 60, this Italian company. It was like Diesel was big, and then Energy and Miss 60. And then some of the people working there were setting up a shop of their own. And then I went to work there, found Acne again. They were wholesaling things, and I met them in Berlin. And then I went to Berlin with my cowboy boots outside of my very tight jeans, and I had a mullet made of dreadlocks. I looked like it. I have the picture still. It's like my old Acne colleagues still laugh at me. And I went there to see them, and I said, I had this crazy speech about how amazing I would do the job for them in Denmark. And then Michael, one of the owners, he was like, this crazy guy, I'm not going to hire him. But then Pontus, that we talked about the other day as well, that's still at Acne, one of my best friends, he was like, no, I think that this guy, even if he looks weird and he talks about all this making it great crap, I think there's something in him. And then he vouched for me. And then I started working with them as an agent through the company I was working with. And then actually by the end of that year, and I think I was like 22, I became the CEO of the Danish entity, which was kind of the first company we would put outside of Sweden and then start rebuilding Acne's way of running distribution and retail. So so it went pretty fast from there. And then I worked with them for 10 years.
You got thrown right into it.
Yeah, which was pretty amazing, because then it also meant that we were very adamant about like setting up a real international company and having plans for it. So we actually opened the store in Copenhagen before we had any real distribution. I think we had like 4 customers, and one was Storm, which is kind of this renowned fashion store in Copenhagen. And we opened the store next to Rasmus. So it's just like, so we had one client in Copenhagen, and then we opened the store 5 meters away from him. But we wanted to see what happened actually by kind of pushing through and doing projects, and then see if we could build a brand like that. So we made it kind of as a blueprint for how to take back markets and build them as well, which was super interesting. So we did that, and then added a lot of projects to the Acne kind of rollout of this as well.
Are there any lessons you learned from your retail experience that kind of became a foundation of how you think about fashion or business?
I think one of the things that I see, but also one of the things that we made kind of the foundation actually for how we worked at Acne as well, was that if you've worked in retail, you kind of know sales to the bone in that sense. And you also, there's a perspective in working on the shop floor that is just vital, because there's so many small details and so many elements of that, which is great building blocks for then becoming a sales rep for a brand, or like representing a brand. And then also always understanding, because if you understand what the people you'll sell the product to will have to do with it, and also what they kind of need in terms of support or information, like all these different things, that seems very lo-fi. But in the end, we had this motto at Acne, which was called like the war is won on the shop floor, which was basically the better we would become with the people selling the product, the better the brand would be. And I think that was one of the things that we were investing in, and also why we're spending so much time traveling the world, kind of setting all this up. So I think that's been, I think if you see the world through, or like if you work in this kind of world, like if you see it through the retail lens, it's pretty rewarding, because then you get all the different fragments of what you need to deliver as well. Because then you also know that just putting out a collection, doing a campaign is not going to help necessarily the people that's going to sell it. So I think, and even if obviously digitally, and there's so many things that came into play as well, I think what we're seeing now with some of these online platforms that are also having a hard time, I think if some people were a little bit less into Excel sheets and calculators and trying to kind of be smart on it, but just knew how to sell product, maybe some of these situations will also be looking a little bit differently.
Right. I always talk about how my retail experience was critical to my growth. I ended up working retail for probably 8 years, but it was during a time when, I did it to just fund my life while I was working on iRay or my other projects. And what was interesting about working retail is, of course, some of the things you can think about, which is like what people are looking for and how to kind of feel out what they're thinking about certain brands or whatever. But a lot of it for me, I think, was being around the best product in the world. And then kind of as my taste and style was changing, I was also kind of like seeing where maybe there was a gap in the marketplace where it was feeding into something I wanted to make, but also, I didn't see it around, and so I kind of say like I was around the best, brands in the world, but day after day, it started to feel so manufactured that, with iRay, I was like, I want to make it about the human touch.
Yeah.
And because a perfectly made suit is like incredible, but when you're around it all day, every day, you start to lose that bit of humanity in it.
I think totally. And I think, I'm a huge fan of like, and I think sometimes people get distant from that as well. And then the further away you would come from it, if you're a designer or like if you work I guess in a lot of different fields, kind of the further you sometimes get away from reality, sometimes one thing is feels comforting for people because then they'd be like, yeah, I can just shut my door and I don't have to talk to anybody. So if I'm there, then I'm probably fine. I'm the total opposite, because the more you go into the field, the more, as you say, like the more interactions, but also the more you learn. And I think for me, that is the main driver as well. So actually it's like how we run the agency today is the exact same mindset as I had for 10 years at Acne. It's like setting up a brand, because obviously I'm not selling a collection in the same way. But for me, the most rewarding is I want to be more in the market than my clients are, because that also means I can enter any meeting and then I would have better intel. And I'm surprised to see that how little they would want to be in the field because there's a little bit like it becomes intimidating. But I think we had this thing at Acne, and I still keep preaching it, was like some of the designers were also forced to go and work in the store. I know that now probably they don't anymore because maybe it's too, but it's like in the major store at Norman store in Stockholm, the team would have to go onto the shop floor because I love the idea of sitting on the Canon that you'll be shooting, which was kind of how you did it if you built like a Canon in 200, 500 years ago or something. You'd have to sit on it to make sure it works. But it's just like, it's too easy to be in a design studio saying, yeah, I want these 3-leg jeans, and they just have to fucking get it because I want it like this and it's my vision. But maybe if you actually talk to a regular person in the store, they might not need it. And then you have to adjust your design a little bit. And I think that's, for me, is not kind of over commercializing something. It's just also throwing up on the wall, see if it sticks, and figuring out what to do with it. And I think some parts come from retail, other parts also just come from loving that kind of live feedback round. And the more digital the world becomes, the more people sometimes think that they can escape that, but there's just, you can. And I think, I spend a lot of, I say sometimes like when all these things that if you get out of like working at an amazing company like Acne, it's like the main thing, I had a handful of friends left when I was done. And luckily my family didn't kind of leave me because I was never home. And I have two of my best friends that would come from my upbringing. And I have Frederik. That's the sacrifice that you had to do to also build a brand to the extent that we wanted, because we were 10, 15 people that spent that much time over 10 years. And that's what you have to do. But I also loved it. I loved renting a car, driving to Germany, being there for a month, talking to all the annoyed German customers that didn't like our distribution strategy. And we changed it and kind of go to a lunch with them, getting yelled at, and then actually telling them what we would do differently, and then leaving there kind of with a mission. Most people I meet, they wouldn't want to do that. But I still like going somewhere and getting it done. And then it might be a different plan that you had from the beginning, but it's just going to be a very rewarding process of doing it as well.
Right. How much time did you spend training the store staff at the different wholesale accounts you were working with?
A lot. I mean, we had this program where we would actually go and work with the stores we worked with and be on the shop floor. So one part was us being a sales rep, but we even recruited local sales reps. And then you could, like at Liberties, for example, in London, where we had, I think at one point we had like 5 shop-in-shops, mainly because we were the best performing ones, where we would have at least one person employed by Acne working in there for free for this department store, just because we wanted to be there, kind of get the interaction with the customers. Also, just kind of reviewing what sold, what didn't sell, doing stock takes and reordering, like all the practical stuff, so that people knew that we meant business with them. So
Yeah.
we spent a ton of time, and it was amazing. I meet a lot of brands and people that would love to do the same, but I think sometimes they underestimate how much time you actually have to spend on it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I know it's also like, I mean, the stores you work, you have an amazing distribution as well. It's like, I think doing those staff trainings, people sometimes like, yeah, we have to go and do them. And then they do a clinic, and then they just kind of do the same nonsense they would do season after season. It's like, but if you show up and you really engage these people and you really talk to them as if your life depended on it, then it also makes sense. If you're just going to go there and ramble some random stuff that somebody put into a PowerPoint, fuck it, then it doesn't matter. But it's like, if you want to go there and actually make them excited about it, it's amazing, right?
Yeah. That's why I do my best to do as much of that as I possibly can, because I worked, retail, and I always felt more connected to a brand or a designer if they came in to talk to us. So like if it felt like they were making an effort to get to know us, even if I only spent a few minutes with them, it always created this sense of like like a bond or like a friendship or something. So I was like, I want to help, Marnie or something, even though Marnie didn't just need my help, but.
No, totally. But I think also that's why it's like, but it needs to be people that wants to do it, that like doing it, and that thrive on doing it. Because I think if you're just doing it because somebody told you you're scheduled to do it, then it doesn't really come across to make sense, right? So I think that's also, yeah, I think it's amazing. And I think actually what you were saying before, because, I run next to the agency as well. I have a small espresso panini bar, like Italo Cafe, which is like I
was going to ask you about this.
Yeah, no. So it's like, actually it's like the whole idea of having, so I have that, and then I have actually, which wasn't planned, but now it's there as well. It's like we have a 30-seat Italian restaurant next door in the same building as well. And I think for me, actually having that is my kind of aquarium of being able to test all these things. Because for me, I love going there. I mean, obviously there's a full team running it, so I'm more like the amateur coming in trying to do it. It's easier on the cafe than it is on the restaurant, but I love going there and then both doing coffee for like the regulars that come in the morning and talking to them, because it keeps reminding me how important that is. But at the same time, also just then I did the Christmas windows. Then we do the Christmas market. Then we do all kinds of things in there. So for me, it's like, it's instead of having a retail store, because if I had to do that, then I'd have to do like buying and all these things. And probably that could also be amazing. But actually the great thing is running like a cafe like that is that it opens from scratch every day. And that's also sometimes what people forget, because if you buy a collection, it'll be hanging there. And then you can do I love doing the hangers and making it look neat in the evening. I always, when I bike home from the office, I bike past stores, and I envy the people that are kind of just fixing the hangers and before they leave. But the thing is, and that's also the monster of running a cafe, even if it's a small operation, every evening you take it all out. Every morning you have to make the lineup of like all the products that goes in there. The flowers needs to look great because you're taking them from the refrigerator room back into the storage, like all these different things. So it means that you have to run it so fucking tight, but it's also amazing because then it's like, it keeps me on my toes all the time. And it also keeps the team that runs it on the toes as well. But actually back to your point, So the girl that runs the 2 restaurants, because I have it with 2 of my best friends, and they're what I said from the beginning is like, I don't want anybody that comes from the restaurant business to run them. I want a retail person to run it, because I want somebody that thinks retail rather than thinking like a chef or something else. Because the chefs can do what they need to do, the waiters, all these things. But the girl, Emma, that runs it is amazing. She has 12 years of retail experience. So she runs it like she would run a store. And that is my dream way of running it, which is back to your point before. Actually, retail makes a huge difference in so many different businesses as well.
Right. Well, and using the restaurant as an example, you know, the food can be getting out on time and hot and all of that. But if the face-to-face contact that you have with the staff isn't friendly or isn't pleasant, or like if you don't leave loving that experience, that restaurant is never a place you're going to go back to.
No.
I mean, that's why we frequent the coffee shops that we do. You know, I drive out of my way usually to go to this one spot because like I love the people there. They have the best coffee, you know, so people go out of their way for like an incredible experience. And that's always something, you know, that I was working on when I worked retail. And what's interesting too about retail, I always thought of it as like, this is kind of my club. You know, I'm more of an early riser than kind of like a late night guy. So everybody's a little different, but I kind of felt like that was my place to build relationships as opposed to like going to parties later on.
Totally. Same for me. And that's also like, we did now just for New Year's, we invited everybody just to come down for a glass of champagne and oysters as well. And then my family was there, like the kids and everybody. And it's like a lot of different people. A lot of people with kids was there as well. And it's like, for me, it's like the perfect thing. We ran it from 11 to 2. And then I'd seen most of my friends, people we work with, like people in the street. And then actually we just had a quiet dinner New Year's Eve, and then we didn't have to see a lot of people. So I think for me, it's really, I'd much rather burn 100% of my energy either doing my work hours in the office or doing something like that, and then don't have to deal with people when they're drunk or want to go out. Like I haven't never done that, and I'm not going to take it up when I become older. That's for sure.
Right. At Acne, I mean, you were 22. You came into a smaller compared to the size that they are now, but
it was very
smaller,
small. We were like super small.
Yeah. And you're 22, you're young, you just worked retail. I mean, tell me a little bit about the guys at Acne Studios, like, you know, Johnny, or like these other people that you got to work with, and maybe how they were able to take you under their wing and kind of teach you everything that you know now.
I think, I mean, there was a great way of kind of, because I was running the first, Denmark was the first kind of satellite market and an office we were setting up as well. So we're kind of making it a blueprint. We had some areas, we still had like agents and distributors. We knew that we were going to be closing it all down and then figuring out how we wanted to do local offices as well. Not everywhere, but just in the markets that made sense. So I think the great thing was actually that I had my own small company here and I had a team. I would go in and out of Stockholm and work with them on different things. But actually, I was very much empowered to set up distribution and like set up the company how felt right for the market as well. Because one of the things that we were adamant about was just that a lot of brands have tried to go into regions, and then if you're too planned out about what you want to do, then maybe you fail. And I think what we knew that we needed a localized kind of mind and somebody that kind of would know how to work with it, but also obviously bringing all the best of kind of the home market or the headquarter into it as well. And I think that was what we're very kind of interested in doing. And then I think I was very lucky to come in at a time where we were still very small and setting up a lot of things. I think in the beginning, it's not that I didn't have too much to do with like Johnny and all these other ones. Obviously, they were all there and it's like they're running it, but it was still at a time where Acne was, we had like the mother company and then the four smaller parts of it. So like Acne Jeans was there. There was Acne Characters, Acne Film, and Acne Creative. So it's like these four companies. So we were all sitting together, or they were all sitting together. And so it was this amazing kind of creative vibe of like a lot of different things going on and having this, I don't know. I think the main thing was just that I got to work with Pontus, who is still working. He's been there for 25 years now, I think. And it was like amazing to kind of work with someone. He's 10 years older than me, and we became best friends, I think, from the beginning, but obviously also just having an amazing work relationship with this as well. So we set up this small team of 5 people or something and kind of split the world between us. And then we were kind of just going for it. And there was just a lot of trust in there as well, to kind of believing in that we would set it up rightfully. So I worked a lot with the distribution. Then at one point, I think after a couple of years, I started working, overseeing the retail division and building that as well. I think at that time, we probably had 3 stores. And we knew we needed to kind of build a retail concept and with everything that comes within it. So I got to work with, had my own team of architects and then kind of building. We had an idea of building an architectural studio at that time as well. So we're doing obviously the retail concept, but doing a lot of other projects as well, which was amazing. So I spent a lot of time in Stockholm and got to work even more with Johnny. But at the same time, we were always running. So I had my market and I was like the CEO of my unit and having a handful of markets to oversee. So I was never kind of letting go of that. But then I was running a full-time job being head of retail. And that was kind of which is a brilliant system, but it was a bit tough, obviously, at the time. But there were some of us people that was always running two jobs, which was kind of nice because you always needed to make sure you were doing the revenue within your markets as well and building all that. But at the same time, being able to kind of put your hands on other parts of the project and the plan as well. So I did that. And then after 7 or 8 stores, we'd open New York and Paris. I went over to then overseeing all of kind of conceptual development. We didn't have a marketing team and all these things. So I was running all special projects. So like collaborations and projects with like super big customers, or like doing Mr. Porter, like all these things that they would do capsules and these kind of things, and doing a lot of visual projects as well. And getting to work even closer with Johnny as well at that time, which was amazing. I mean, for me, he's a brilliant creative director because he actually, he comes from retail. He worked in stores before and he was kind of into that as well. So he's kind of self-taught all the way through, which is very inspiring because he never went to fashion school or did any studies in terms of that, but just had a plan and a gut feeling, and then also kept elevating his mindset and his belief in what he wanted to do, and kept learning new things as well, which was is and have been very inspiring as well to look at, because that kind of means that you don't always have to walk the traditional path of doing it as well, but very much keeping your hand on the plate and realizing what's right and wrong and what goes on in the world as well.
Yeah. I think a lot of us could look at Acne Studios as, in a way, a poster child, I guess, of like building a brand. And I'm really curious about vision and maybe the importance of vision and how you saw that being a part of the company, and then maybe what you take from that and apply it to the people you work with at Moon.
I mean, I think it's like if you're self-taught in that way, so in the same way as I've never kind of seen myself as creative in that sense as well. It just came over time because then you do more and more projects and that becomes that. So I think the great thing is coming from Scandinavia, and I think that was a bit of the same things that Acne also had, is like you need to strive to be very good at what you do in order to kind of then go somewhere and then show it off, and like kind of to prove yourself as well. So I think there's basically just a lot of hard work in it, which I think is that's part of the vision, knowing that you'll have to actually work your ass off to make that happen as well. And then of course just using a lot of just like utilizing your life and everything around you and the people you meet into this as well. I think he's been great at that, and I think it's not that we're trying to. It's not like a thing that we've seen that's been important for us. But I see, looking back at it, and also because now we've been running Moon for the last 10 years, I think we've become even more clear about that what we want to do needs to be 110% us, and also just sometimes sticking to your guns, because there's just things you like and feels part of you. And I think that's just important to kind of keep reiterating and keep pushing, because as a creative or as an agency, and also if you need to be a trusted kind of advisor in something, you also need to figure out what you stand for. And I think that by that you also create your own style and also your own definition of what things will look like and how they should be as well. And I think a lot of that is just basically based on all of the things we've learned over the last 20 years as well. And that never stops, right? Because then it just keeps keep adding to it. I think that's a big part of it as well.
So for them, it didn't really. They might have had a somewhat grand vision for what the brand was, but it was really that tenacity and the experience that fed into wanting to build it to be bigger and bigger, in a sense.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I meet people that would think like, yeah, they think that Acne could have probably been much bigger. I mean, in terms of scale, because it's a big company. But if you look at the trajectory for a lot of companies right now, they all want to grow in double digits all the time. I think what was great back then, and I would envision or think that it's the same today, is just that they're just a small group of people that needs to make the decisions. And I think that's great, especially in the way that the world is today as well, is that you need to grow at a certain kind of level all the time to be able to be independent and do your own thing. I think we were great at doing that at that time. I think they look like they've been great at doing it now as well, because if everything comes down to numbers and kind of stakeholders and like all these shareholders and all these different things, then it's just difficult to keep your independence and keep doing what you want to do. And I think Acne is a good example of a brand that's just always been kind of walking to their own tune, and then also just doing whatever they wanted. And I think that's an important thing if you want to be in the business for a very long time.
I think you bring up a good point. And there's part of what you're saying, which is, and I'm being devil's advocate a little bit, there's part of what you're saying, which is be on the ground, listening to customers or listening to the staff or the buyers, the people that are selling the product. But then there's also a sense of, we're going to do our own thing, even if you don't love this particular idea. So how do you view that paradox now with Moon, and when you're working with your clients at Moon? How do you teach someone to listen to certain thoughts and then totally disregard others?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a contradiction, and you could say that on the other way as well, as like that if you're informed enough, then you can also, because I think for us it's like then you'll be able to say, okay, I know all this, but it makes sense to do it like this. But the problem is a lot of people don't always want to do all the gathering of information. And I think, and that's not like necessarily like in an intellectual way that it needs to be, because I can definitely not be. That's not my thing. I mean, it's like that's actually the great thing. Frederik and I is like, he's the journalist. He comes from that. He loves reading all the articles, doing all that. He's the guy that reads all the articles on business or fashion. I read the headlines, and then I go into the market and figure out if it's actually true. But I have a lot of people that I talk to, so I think it's important to be informed in order to counter propose whatever it should be, because I think then it makes sense. If you're uninformed and then you just kind of come up with something that just is a creative idea, then I think it's tricky. So I think, of course, that also means that we need to work with people that trust us, and a big part of what we do is also very much trust-based. And of course, that takes a little bit of time to kind of nurture and also build up over time. But it also makes it more rewarding to work with as well. So I think, I think for us, it's just that we try to learn as much as possible, and then in order to give an informed kind of direction or proposal on something as well. And then I think that the next thing is just, and I think maybe that's something that I've learned from Acne, and maybe Johnny in particular, is just to trust the gut feeling, because I think we trust our intuition on a lot of stuff, and that's not always something you can kind of pinpoint what it is. And I'm not saying that we're right all the time, but I just think that we've built at least enough cases and projects and kind of knowledge to be able to say, trust us on this. This is going to be great. And then I think I'm a kind of an old car salesman to the bone as well. I'm also pretty good at then selling it back in. So I think if you combine those things, then at least that's given us 10 years of trailblazing time for now. So I think we probably have enough to keep going as well.
Right. So going back to the example you used of like the 3-legged jeans, if that really felt like the thing, you would go out there and sell as many of those 3-legged jeans as you could.
I mean, sometimes you need to do that, right? So it's just, but I think we're trying to have like enough kind of what you call like it's like an octopus would have like all these arms out. We want to have enough arms out so we have different legs of information that keeps feeding in, and that's for us. That's like how we've always. That's actually back to why, probably also how. Maybe I hope that's how Rick Rubin works. Rick Rubin will probably know who he would like to work with because he sees something like. So that's how we've done it, and that's actually the proactive way of running the agency, where I don't know if it's way different from other ones, but when I talk to other people, then maybe it is anyways. It's like, we know who we want to work with. Then I run the exact same terminology as what I did at Acne, and it's how you would do it in distribution. You know your target list of clients or customers, stores you want to work with. Then you know that you want to be at Dover Street. Maybe you don't get there the first season, but you know you're going to have to keep targeting them. But you also know you can't really fuck up and take the one around the corner, because if you do that, you're not going to be able to go back into them as well. So how we run the agency is that we've done it the same. We know which companies we would like to work with. Then not all of them are necessarily achievable at the first time, but they're not the customers that everybody else would have on their dream list, because we also know we want something in a specific category. So it's been important for us to work with people in the furniture industry, then also in the design industry, then in sportswear, shoes, handbags, fashion, something that is high fashion or like more mainstream, because that adds a lot of data from kind of commercial side, something that's a bit more luxury in that sense. So I think we very much kind of listed that out, because then we know, okay, the information from the furniture industry will give us this, the contemporary fashion will give us this, high fashion will give us this, and then sometimes we gravitate towards just some of the things, and then we leave some things out, and that also means that our clients don't have to be afraid that we'll take another brand exactly like them and do what we did for the other ones, because that's not interested for us, because then we'll just repeat ourselves. So basically anything we ever done, we kind of roll it up, throw it away, and then the next project we start all over again. So for us, it's kind of always this new journey with it as well. So that means that everything's informed by different industries, different people, and then we, I don't know, put it into our heads, and then me and Frederik come up with whatever that kind of gives of a result in the end as well.
Right. And what's great about working within the different subsectors of the industry is like you can figure out, hey, this worked for the, this furniture project. I wonder if this idea in a little bit different way is going to work with this footwear project, or for an example.
Yeah, and also, but also the thing is, a lot of these industries are very different in where they are in time or like in evolution. So for a long time, fashion was way ahead, and then furniture was like 3 to 5 years behind in terms of how progressive they were in communication and image style, like all these different things. And then you have the category brands, a lot of the shoe brands that are more category specific, and they're very determined by their distribution, because it's mass market distribution. Even if you're Nike, you still sell to the masses. So you have to be you can be progressive on some parts, but you have to be very commercial on other ones. So I think that is also a lot to do with where the different markets are, and then the audience. And the interesting part is obviously that what happened over the last 20 years is that the audience, they're all caught up in a way, at least like the different brackets of people. So for us, it's always been interesting. Why, if you're on a shopping street and there's a furniture store and a sportswear store and a luxury store, why would the shopping experience be so different? Back to your retail points as well before, because I've never understood like why it used to be that you were afraid of walking into a Louis Vuitton store because it was very expensive and people didn't know what to do about it. Now it's everybody does. If you're 14, you don't have a problem with going in there, touching it. But in the next store, you might be very uncomfortable when to look at a chair. It's way less expensive than the bag you just looked at, but it feels intimidating, and there's no music. It's all quiet, and people are thriving on information rather than service technique. Like there's all these different things. So I think that's what gets us going. It's like this amazing world of different kind of they're out of tune, and it's like, but it's still the same.
Yeah.
It's still the same consumer, and it's like, and how to work with that is, I think, is amazing. And that doesn't always mean that all the best brands in the world you want to work with are on is a maison in Paris, or like it needs to be nice, like all these things. Like I think sometimes when people run agencies, they have this like glorified number of clients that would be the dream one. I think we work with dream clients across the board because we have a trust relationship. We get to do what we like, and they believe that we'll deliver big and small what needs to come through at the end of the day as well.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. You bring up an interesting point about the, kind of the difference between a Louis Vuitton store and then a furniture store. And I think it becomes important to think about almost the perception that you're giving off, what you're connecting to. Because furniture, as an example, if I walk into a furniture store and it looks like a gallery space, I'm not going to want to touch it, because a gallery, you can't touch the artwork, so you almost have to kind of decide the perception almost that you want to give off. I heard Virgil Abloh say in a interview he did once, I think he had it was a candle that was in the shape of a kind of a crushed soda can.
Yeah.
And he said, if this is in my garage, it's garbage. But if this is in a gallery, like it's a piece of art.
Yeah.
So I think all of those things come into play.
Totally. And I think that's what's so amazing about, and that's maybe why we keep coming back to retail, because it's like, it's the eye of the beholder, like, and the real audience is the end consumer. It's like anything, 99% of everything that's like you could work with ends up with a private person that somebody you have to deal with. And that doesn't mean that you need to take everything in from them or whatever, but it's just that it's exactly as you say. And I think the interesting part of this is that in the furniture business, like it's actually, as you say, like you go in and it looks like a gallery, that there might even be a sign on the chair that says, please don't sit. And then you get even more like shit. And then there's no real music playing. So it's like, so that also means like when you work in that industry, there's so many things you can crank up, because it's like, what happens if you turn up the volume a little bit so you don't hear your own steps because that's intimidating? And what if actually you could sit in the chair? And what happened if you took the chair and put it up on the podium so you could actually see the legs of the chair? That might be important for the design. Like there's so many things that you then know from somewhere else that you can kind of bring in. But I think also to Virgil's point, is just that what's always been interesting is that if you're luxury and then you can take something that is like high and low and mixing it together, but it's like it works best if the distance is big enough between, but it's also the reverse. So it's like if you're low, you can put it up high, or if you're high, you can bring in the low. So I think that the only interesting time to do that is when it meets the audience, because if it never meets the audience, it doesn't matter, right? And I think, and that's where the world has become amazing, because I think maybe back to the Acne point, like if we had a vision, it was like taking a denim brand, an inexpensive denim brand, and making it premium. That was the ambition, right? So the first time I would go, I mean, Scandinavia is a bit different, but like when I took over the Dutch market, I remember going to Amsterdam, and there was a store in PC Hoofdstraat, which is called Di Dato, I think. It's like they were selling Prada. They were selling like a lot of these Italian brands. And then I remember saying to them, okay, I want to sell you this. I want to sell you these jeans. I know you Prada's going to be doing jeans. We'll sell you jeans. I want to sell you a leather jacket. They'd be like, yeah, but why do we need that? It's like, I can sell a Prada jacket for 10,000 euros. You're going to offer me something that is 800 euros. Why? And I was like, but I'm confident that there's going to be a customer that wants that. And they were like, yeah, but we can just sell one of these. And at that time, they would only sell one, because it wasn't at that time, it's like 20 years ago. It's not like they were selling them every day like they might do now. And they just didn't believe me. And they were just like, yeah, but you're not going to get anywhere with this. It's like an obscure dream of like trying to sell jeans to this audience, because they don't want it. They want the wool pants and the leather jacket. But still just believing that there was space for something that was commercially inclusive rather than excluding in that sense. And I think that's what's different now, because now the world is totally mixed, and you have that high and low, and Virgil was a great advocate for that as well. And there's a lot of brands that were, I think Acne was also. But it also means that you have to work even harder to get that dynamic, because it's not just like you can't just roll it out of your sleeve anymore, because now the dynamic needs to be even more understandable. It's like it needs to be there for real.
Right. It's one of the things that Dover Street Market has always been good at, and they set it up to be like a street market, so you'll have like Homme Plus next to a t-shirt wall, and so you have, I mean, what I see most when I'm at the store is like, a 15, 16-year-old skater kid who like can walk by and admire like Prada or Craig Green or something, and then they can leave with a dime t-shirt or something. So it's
and you can't judge who can afford it anymore. And I think that's also what became different over the last 20 years, is that before people would look at you and be like, yeah, you don't look like the customer that would buy this expensive piece of furniture, or like a bag or a leather jacket, but now you have no clue. And it's like, it was one of the things when I was at Acne. It's like I still do it sometimes when I'm in a crossing on my bike. I would always, especially in the beginning at Acne, it's like I would be in the crossing, and then all the people I would stop with for red light, I would look at them and then think, who could be my potential Acne customer? And to begin with, for sure, there was like zero, because also it's like, but then over time, it's like, I remember when we started selling shearling jackets, they were like 2,000 euros, and like people were thinking that's really expensive. And then I started that at that time, people were starting to buy the jeans, and I could kind of see that. And then I was like, okay, when I was in the red light crossing, I was like, okay, who could be the one that would wear this? And then eventually one would wear something like that in that. But if I stop now, the majority of people are buying that kind of stuff and wearing it. And I think that just became the difference, is that people, they save up. I mean, my 70-year-old daughter, she saves up to buy a Prada bag, or she saves up to buy a Balenciaga bag, and she will do it. She will work the hours at the cafe to kind of make the money and just be able to say, by the way, I'm going to buy this. And then I would never be against it, but I also just be like, of course, that's your own earned money. It's like, if that's important for you. But then she might also just, obviously she has the luxury of just going into our wardrobes and then picking old stuff that then can work for her as well. But it's just, I find it so fascinating that that people just have that independence to be able to do what they want to do now. But you have to work hard for me to persuade my 17-year-old daughter to want to like something that I work with. It takes a bit of stamina, because they're not going to be won over. And I'm not sure that they're not full brand ambassadors anymore. She doesn't want to wear a full attire from somebody. And I think that's the struggle of the future, is that you're not going to be like from top to toe in brands in the same way it was 10 years ago as well.
Yeah. Wow. You just brought up so many things I could ask about. There's so many good pieces there. Yeah, that it's so interesting about the full look thing, because although it's still important from a brand side, right? Because if you're like, I may not buy or be able to afford a whole like Rick Owens outfit, but the Rick Owens look would be a reason that I, buy a pair of drop crotch pants, yeah, or a pair of boots or something. So even though people aren't shopping like that, I guess here, like as an example of what you would be talking about to your clients for Moon, like what importance are you putting on the visual nature, of the looks, of the campaigns, while also knowing that, people don't shop like that anymore? How are you like balancing that from a visual perspective?
I think in general, we're probably doing more projects. I mean, so you're not just kind of putting it on that one seasonal thing, but sometimes it's also that if you want to convey a message, sometimes you need to put it into that kind of bigger seasonal thing. But depends a lot on the message. I think the main thing for us has actually never been, also because Frederik, my partner, is like, he comes from journalism, and one thing that we've always kind of stuck to is the simplify and exaggerate. So for us, it's actually more kind of simplifying the message, and the message sometimes it might be the look, other times it might be the feeling, other times it might be kind of more of a belonging within the brand. It's like something you want to kind of advocate for. So I think there can be a lot of different messages, but definitely for us, it's more keep amplifying that thing, but just boiling down the message. And then that's I don't know. It's like, but it's, as you say, it's like it's changed over the years, because it used to be that it was like the outfit. Now it's, I guess the bigger campaigns don't have the same power anymore. And I think that's also what's interesting, because that also means that you're going to keep iterating your ideas and making them come to life. I think one thing that I was just thinking about before, where she said, like, with Dover Street, the one thing that I'm the saddest about over the last 20 years is that there's less amazing multi-brand stores, because I think for me that's like the most amazing experience. And I was just talking to my family about it, because we were in Rome between Christmas and New Year's, and it's like you have all these monobrand stores, and and I don't think my daughter really appreciated it, but I was just like, fuck, we're not going to be able to go into a multi-brand store together and get excited about something because it's all monobrand. And she was a bit like, yeah, whatever. but it's just, and that's, I love whether it's like campaigns conveying the message. For me, it's like the stores conveying the message. It's like, it's putting these things together, and actually maybe even shopping at a store where, fuck the brands, it's the store that it's like, it's a Dover Street product you're buying, you're walking out with the bag. And those kind of multi-brand stores you had in almost every city, right? You would go to your local store, and then they would curate and put together something that they felt was right for you. And then you bought the brand through them. Now it's like you're not buying it through these vendors anymore. And that, in a way, I could talk hours, but unfortunately, we're not going to be able to solve that, because it requires a lot of cash and a real risk-willing plan to do it. But it's just that for me is actually who's going to sell the looks. But unfortunately, they're disappearing as well. So the state of play is going to be totally different in the years to come, right?
Yeah, I wonder though if it's gonna swing back to that, because I think we had.
I hope so, but it's just unfortunately, a lot of these people that were great at this, they need to teach some other people, because before they kind of go out a bit. So I think we're running on a clock with that, because a lot of these people are shifting into other jobs or other roles. But for me, it's like, it's still the same people that are amazing at doing this. Yeah, the kind of the handover time is becoming a bit urgent as well, I
think. Is this a project that you've been thinking about doing yourself? As far as like,
that's why
you have an Italian restaurant.
That's why I did the cafe, to not think about it anymore. No, but I think I have an amazing friend, Andreas Mokudis, in Berlin. I guess you know the store as well. He's like, I work with him. He's been a very good friend for 20 years now. We started working together. He was the first franchise partner for Acne. So we started working there, and I was running the German, the market. So I was kind of seeing him a lot, and I'm fortunate to keep working with him. He has this amazing store in Berlin, and there's a lot of things I love about him and also how he works. But one thing is also that maybe that's back to Rick Rubin. He only works with referral. If you want to sell your brand to him, then the only way to really get his attention is that I tell him that you would like to talk to him, and then he will tell you when to come by the store. He's always in the store, for example. So, or even that old school way of doing it. But he only picks up brands by referral, which is an amazing system, I think, because that means that he needs to know somebody that will actually put their hand on the plate and tell him this is a brand you should work with. But another thing is that we keep, every time we see each other, we would be like, we should open a furniture store, or we should open another multi-brand store, or we should do something. But it's just, then I wouldn't be able to do any of the things I do next to it, because I would love to do it, but I'm deadly afraid of the consumption of time to be able to do it. Because it wouldn't be run by sell-through numbers and weekly lists of things to do. It would be run by heart, which is the same way as he runs his store. I know that, and I acknowledge the fact that you need the other stuff to kind of run a lean machine. But I think Andreas, for example, he buys things. He might have things in the store that's maybe 5 years old, but he's still on display in the store because he still feels it is relevant for the other things he's buying. And I know that might not be a business case for everybody, but if you're able to do that, you're still holding on to some of the old and the new ways of working, which for me, I love.
Right. It could be interesting though for you to, like, you know, if you had like Moon Market and it was like Cecile and like Ganni and ASICs and, your other clients and at Collective and like do kind of like a smaller Dover Street Market, but with the brands that you represent.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've done similar things. It's like the for now, it's like the beauty is actually that we get to do all the things that I could imagine doing. We have a way of selling it to our clients and then actually doing it through them. So a lot of times, like we're doing during Copenhagen Fashion Week for the first time, we're not doing any shows during Fashion Week because all the ones we work with are kind of moved out or like we're working on stuff. So we won't be doing any runway shows this time because we brought Sunflower is going to show in Paris and Ganni is pausing it and doing an exhibition and all these different things. So we get to do a lot of amazing things. And we're doing like a Fabric of the Future exhibition together with Ganni where they work with designers that are kind of working with new materials and kind of doing that. And we're working with a lot of design talent. So we get to work with that with them. We're running a pop-up cafe with them through Italo. So we get to do another iteration of that. And then we're doing with DM, the Italian shoe brand, we're doing a newspaper and launching Prosecco with them as part of like a entertainment kind of thing, doing it at the cafe. And then we're doing a leather workshop with Echo and at Collective as well. So bringing a lot of designers in to work with leather during that week. And at the same time, we're opening with this amazing store here in Copenhagen called Nørgaard, which is, it's from 68. It's like, it has the same, if you go and see it, it's like, I was there again yesterday. It's like, it has all the values of like the Corso Como, but it's in Copenhagen. So it obviously, it feels a bit different, but it's like, it's full of art. It's like the furniture is from everything from like Eileen Gray to Martin van Severen, and like all these amazing designers have been bought throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So all the furniture is amazing. And we go in there and doing a lot of projects. So we'll do a bookshop, we'll do talks, we're doing a party there's a men's and women's public toilet, which is amazing because it's on the surface of the main square of Copenhagen. And it's amazingly designed 100 years ago. So we've had the permissions to do a party where we open the doors between the men's and women's sections. It's two different toilets. And then people can we're going to have a party in the men's and the women's, but they can go into each other's area. And it's below ground, right next to the Louis Vuitton store in Copenhagen. So we get to do like all these different things, but with our clients instead of having to do it ourselves. So actually,
right.
That's why we haven't done it yet, because we work with amazing people that allow us to do all the crazy projects we can come up with ourselves. They actually embark with and then work with us doing it. So we get a lot of things lived out.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're operating with the same rules as like a 10 Corso Como or like Dover Street Market, but you're just not doing it within four walls.
No, yeah.
It kind of allows you to be free.
Exactly. So for now, it kind of lives across that. But maybe eventually. I guess now is not right now the time, but I guess at one point we should get the band together and then do a rumble of projects that could kind of be that. That's why we had Space, our magazine, at one point, because we could kind of do that. We've spent all Christmas talking about how to do it, to revive it. We need to do issue 7. But the great thing is we're kind of starting it now, and we know exactly what we want to do, because now we know we just want to do what's 110% us and not try to do anything else. So actually we came back to the same conclusion as we did 10 years ago, but we're just calibrating it towards 2024. And I think so we stick to our guns and then keep recalibrating, I think.
Right.
Actually, I was just thinking, because as you asked before, I think how we, it's a little bit like when we're talking now as well. I think that's actually kind of the same way as we run. If we have, sometimes I get invited, or we get invited to, I don't know, come into like a board or something where we kind of say, okay, this is kind of what we see is going on right now, and this is what's going to maybe happen in the future or whatever. And just to kind of give a slice of life in that sense. And I think before in the past, I would kind of spend a lot of time on doing slides and talk about all that. Now I kind of skip that, and then I just maybe do some slides. Maybe Frederik would do that to kind of keep an intellectual level on something and show something. But I actually just mainly talk about what I've experienced the last week or just recently in terms of being out there a lot. And then sometimes people might think that I just go on and ramble a lot, and then and then they'd be like, what just happened? And then my answer to that is actually just that then there's like two ways out of it. Because one thing is, if they don't believe me, then they can just then they can go out and experience themselves. And if they think that I'm just talking a lot and there's like no real sense in it, then I don't think that they are kind of in the real world, and then they're not really calibrated with what actually is needed in the market. And then they can just fuck off, because then I don't need to work with them. So in that sense, it's also like we've kind of I was discussing with somebody the other day that she was turning 40, and she was like, she gave up on being, she didn't want to be like dressing up fashionably all the time, because then people would just comment to it. And I was like, yeah, for me, it's just like when I became 40, I just decided I didn't care anymore. I just said exactly what I feels right. Of course, I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but at the same time, you kind of have to be, the world is brutally honest. And if you want to operate in it, you just have to say it. And then it might be comforting in a boardroom or like in the management level of a company. But if you just say is as is, then either they subscribe to it or they is going to find themselves on the wrong path at one point, right?
Yeah. And that's one of the luxuries you have, though, as well. Like you've worked your way into a position where now you can be your own boss, and you can be brutally honest. You know, I think it can be hard for people when their livelihood is, you know, having a job and all that. And I think maybe that's where companies, when they get too big, that becomes part of the problem, right?
No, exactly. And maybe it's like, of course, then as you can say, it's like you need to run some mileage to kind of have that, not necessarily to kind of have the courage to say it, because you can have that if you're young enough, but it's more, of course, you need to be able to back it up with whatever. You can't just be guns blazing and nothing. But I think, that's also the reassuring part of it, kind of being in the business for a long time. Of course, like you pick things up, but I think it's also just being thorough and kind of open-minded and just getting a lot of inputs all the time as well. And I think also the best thing is that's also the best way of figuring out if you want to work with people, because we definitely want to work with people that we respect and we feel that we're kind of on wavelength as well, both kind of mindset wise and value wise, and just want to work with people that treat each other properly and also have a respectful tone of discussion. Then you can be very honest and kind of direct, but that's only better for us, I think. Yeah,
in a way, it allows you to test the waters, I guess, on how a partnership with somebody would be if they're able to take honest feedback, or if they just need, you know, yes men around them.
Yeah, exactly. But it also means like 9 out of 10 times when we go on a shoot, not that shoots is kind of the most important thing all the time, it's like we obviously also create a lot of content and campaign material and all that. I think 9 out of 10 times we don't even have our clients with us, because what we've done, we spend most of our time planning, and then we have a 100+ page shoot brief with like all the information. Like we've decided together with them, like the looks, the outfits, the hair and makeup, like the lights, like compositions for all these things. We build it out meticulously. And we learned that in the beginning by doing a lot of very commercial, huge jobs as well. So we kind of needed that, but it also allowed us to kind of sign it all off and then let the client be in their office doing what they're great at, because they might not be great art directors or have a mindset of like being on a shoot. We go and shoot it. To a lot of extent, we even shoot it on film. So we don't even have somebody behind the screen trying to be the experts of that. And then we hand it over, and then it looks like what we proposed in the beginning as part of the concept as well. So that also means that we have to be very careful on what we deliver back. But so we kind of have to come back to what we promised initially. But that's also with the way we work with all the things. So it keeps us on our toes, because if we come back with crap, then we're also going to be in trouble, right? Because we didn't necessarily have them on the shoot. But that also means that everything we do, we need to deliver on point as well.
How much, I mean, with 100-page brief, how much room does that leave you for, serendipity, for like kind of a strike of an idea that you want to explore?
That gives us, because if we plan the 100% out, that gives us the ability to kind of push it to 120%, because that's kind of the next part of it. It's like, so that's why we want to be meticulous about the plan, because if we then we know we'll do the 12 images that hits that, then we will do the extra 4 that will give us the creative leverage to that as well. But actually, the main thing, and that's something we've strived to do, and it's like one of the things an old friend of mine told me. He's like an advertising, like commercial film guy that does like big commercials, like Audi, like all the big commercials. And that's like, for him, he was always like, because they burn so much cash when they do that as well. It's like he would always pitch an idea that is too much in order to kind of, he was kind of pitched to get fired at the first meeting. And we very much took that with us as well. And I've told him every time I see him, it's like, we keep pitching ideas that's 110%, because if we sell an idea in and it's like at 100% of what we would like to do, then before we're done with it and it's like work with it and it's like, and kind of build the brief, then we're down to 80%, because there will be some hurdles along the way. So we pitch ideas that's 110 to 120% of what's reasonable, or like what would make sense, because then we can scrap the 20% and still hit something that we feel is what we wanted to do. But it's also a great way of scaring off clients. So it's like, so if they're not on to the 120%, then they get scared. Then it's like, let's just leave it at that, and then we don't know going to do the project together, because we want to make sure that we have their attention and then they feel they want to do that leap. And if they don't want to do that, then it's not for us to kind of work with them. And it's not, and that's also back to, that's not trying to be an asshole. That's just trying to be very precise on what we feel is the right thing for that project. And if they don't feel that, then maybe we're not the right ones to deliver the project that they came for.
In a sense, it seems like you're describing, you like to under promise and over deliver a little bit. Like, you would feel happy with the exact, brief or project, whatever you're giving somebody. But if you can, you like to add a little something on the back end that your client wasn't expecting, and that creates a better experience for them.
Totally. And that is also, that's easy if you deliver, like if you deliver what you promised and then you have something else. And that's actually, it's interesting that you say just that kind of phrase, because that was a huge part of what we did at Acne. We basically, and probably that's the Swedish English version of undercommit and over deliver, but it was really this thing. So like, if delivery is like, if we said we're going to deliver on Thursday, we wanted to deliver on Wednesday. If we say it's like all these things, we always had that specific thing in mind when working with the customers we would sell to, and then from there to the end consumer as well. So that would be, just to your point, like if we would go and support the stores we work with on the shop floor, for example, then a part of that would also be that I would also take the vacuum cleaner when we closed off and actually vacuum clean the floor, just to do a bit of the shit job we also knew that they were supposed to do, just to get them to understand that we actually meant real business, but also real effort into this as well.
Yeah, going that extra mile, I think, is really important.
But doing it real, so it doesn't become too kind of like, you're not desperately kind of overperforming to kind of beg for it, but just that you feel that it's an important part of running the business, right?
Right. In the Vogue article that you sent me, which, thank you for sending that, it was great. You ended up talking about how brands are either good at business strategy or, commercial development, or they're great at the creative. Why do you feel like that's the disconnect?
I think, for us, it was actually one of the, it was the starting point for Moon, actually, because we wanted to work in that intersection of that. That's also why, if you look at how Frederik and I are combined, that was the starting point. Now it's different because we kind of morphed into one in that sense, and Moon is kind of the way out of it. But he was like the creative, I was the brand commercial guy, and then when we talked together, we knew what we wanted. I think it was way more kind of obvious 10 years ago, and now it maybe became something a little bit different. But now you see it's like, I have a friend that worked a very good friend that works in the e-com business as well, and she kept talking about that the calculators had taken over, and it's just like this, and she kind of sees them as like the embodiment of a calculator walking around in the fashion department of an e-com company, because that's kind of what happened. And I think so now you'll see it again in a different way. I think when we started Moon, where it was like you had these brands that were great at building a business, but they weren't really good at kind of the tactility of running retail, or like the interaction between consumer and brand, and building that. And then you would have the other ones that were great at that, but then never really made any real business plan and kind of a plan to roll it out. I think that might also still be the case, but I think also even more now, it's like the all these technical advancements you can do are great, but the only thing it eliminates is 100% the human factor. So I think we're kind of back to the same status quo of something, but in a different way, because I don't know, it's like getting newsletters from all these companies, like everything's going on sale, and I couldn't feel more underwhelmed of start buying something, because it's done by an algorithm, and maybe I clicked something and then it shows up, but it's like I'm missing that human factor. So maybe for us, it's kind of building that human factor back into it. And by that, creativity also comes, because humans are different and can't really be just planned out in that way, right?
Right. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking about when we were talking about the multi-brand store, is like the more things go online, the more, AI gets integrated into the things we do and all that. I think the human component is going to be even more important, So like multi-brands are closing now because you have online retailers that are growing, but I think it'll switch back to that, because you just can't, the human factor can't be missing completely from something.
No. And I think and that's also the thing. So, but the human factor is also this thing where, like, for me, it's like driving that car through Germany, kind of resetting the distribution at Acne at that point. It's like I would go to a city in the evening before I had a meeting with a customer, because I was looking at all distribution in Germany. So I had to go to all cities. I would go to cities we had stores we work with, and also cities we didn't have. And then I would go, and the night before I would arrive in Bremen or something. And then I would go by the store when it was closed, look at it, figure out if I really felt that it was right for us to work with them, and then go in and take the meeting to either say, let's continue, and let's stop it now because you're not right for distribution. I'm going to have to pull it back. I don't really think you can figure that out by an algorithm or a machine. It's like, I'm not saying everything has to be based on distribution, but it's just that decision making, whether it's right or wrong when you're in it. That's what I'm advocating for, and that's also what we're advocating for in all the projects we do, because that's a human factor. But it's not. It's also this feeling, if it's right or wrong, gut feeling, right? Because one thing is human factor. You can add that, and I think that's also what's been overdeveloped over the years, and maybe we were also part of it at Acne. It's like we wanted desperately to run a service organization. It's like retail service needed to be better and better and better, but that came from the human factor, and then obviously needs to be put into a system. But then when the system develops, it becomes like going to Starbucks when they be like, do you want a double or triple shot, or do you want this or that? And it's just like, then you're back to, it's a human, but it's just a machine. And I hate that as well. So the human factor for some is that thing, like having that person working at the till, but that's not the human factor. The human factor is looking at you and figuring out, are you going to be a guy that wants a triple shot because you look tired? Or do you just want a normal latte with no questions? So it's the accessibility of figuring out, should I ask you? Should I not? That's the human factor. It's not saying, do you just want whatever somebody told me that I should ask everybody so we can make $1 more on everything, right?
Right, exactly. For your clients, at what point or what stage of the business are they generally coming to you at? Are they small designers that are just getting started, or are they big companies that are, struggling and maybe their sales are dipping? At what point of a business do people usually come to you?
Good question, but that's a little bit back. I mean, it's like some we stalk to kind of get to work with. Right now, we haven't been looking at new things for a while. I mean, because we have back to this kind of different level of projects, then some at the time, a lot of people were kind of approaching us because they were like startup, which is because we've done projects and we've worked with them, built them over time, like with Cecile Bahnsen and like some of these things, Magdeburg, like, but that's been projects where we were like personally engaged, and also that we had a kind of a shared vision of where it should go. So sometimes they come in, but then it's not really, we don't love startups per se. We like a good challenge. It's like sometimes it's scaling something from small to big, or from big to mega big. It's like we want to, that's a little bit dependent on where we are in our own mindset as well. And we spend a lot of time, we take out a couple of times a year, me and Frederik just go somewhere for a couple of days and just look at our client list and then figure out what do we want to do, which ones are the future, which ones are the ones that that doesn't necessarily kind of teach us anything going forward, and then we figure out how to do with that, and then we figure out what we want to do. So they come to us in a lot of different ways. A lot actually, as I've adapted the Andreas mindset that also is referral, because it's just like, if it's somebody we know that knows somebody and it makes sense to talk to them, then maybe that makes sense. So it's kind of I don't know. I don't think there's a formula. It's and sometimes it's just, you look at something and you want to, I don't know. We do also pro bono projects just because we had know people that we love and work. I mean, I've worked with Wade Spawner for the last 5 years, and I'm like, I love Grace's her whole universe and like her whole world, and then I've always just been kind of encouraging to do projects with her, but we've done her website, we've done like some bigger projects, but also just kind of supporting and being able to support in whatever way we can do. So we try to do some of that, but that's sometimes maybe not off the invoice list, but just doing that, and then we do some other stuff that's big and does something different. They all have different boxes to tick as well.
Right. How can you tell? I mean, what do you feel when you meet a designer that has like the it factor? So I mean, because you're working with like Grace is a great example, but I mean, what are you looking for, and how can you feel that?
I think the main thing is just this unique drive in the person that has something. I mean, when we were talking the first time as well, it's like you also have a plan for what you want to do. And I think if I meet people that have a genuine plan, and Grace is a great example because she's built this amazing universe, but just by herself. She doesn't have any investors. She's been kind of cracking on and getting it done. And then I love that. And I love the way you build your brand, or like, I love the, like with collectives, like how Echo's built. It's like a family-owned company of €2 billion, and it's run by a family in the outskirts of Denmark. It's like that's amazing. Like you meet somebody that has that, or with Ganni, with like, I've known Nicola and Dieter for the last 20 years. Like they built all that by themselves. Obviously they have partners in it today, but I want that drive. If we meet somebody that just feels like they can come with a couple of references and they have no plan, then it doesn't feel that it needs to be inspiring as well, and something you want to embark on. That's our main problem. That's actually why we don't take a lot of meetings, because I tend to fall in. If I meet somebody that has that, I fall in love with it, and we want to work with it, but maybe don't have the time. So we try to just have people send us what they sometimes want. It's like, even if it's a project we know we want to do, we force people to kind of email us or do something that actually, so we can see what it is they want, because I don't want to fall in love with something and then people are not really wanting to go the extra mile. Then I lose interest, or we lose interest as well.
Yeah, that's great. What are some of the ways that you view opportunity? I'm really fascinated by this. I mean, because you're talking about limiting the conversations you have because you can get excited about things. When we're selling things, it is a business, right? But part of that is like playing the long game. There are things that you want to do. There might be things you want to do now. There might be things that like seem like the best thing ever, but for the future, it could be horrible. I mean, how do you view opportunity, and how do you guide your team and your clients in the things that you should take, or they should take, or not take?
The quick answer is that's probably gut feeling. I mean, it's like
comes back to the intuition.
Yeah, I think it's intuition, and I think we've learned, both Frederik and me, we kind of learned to lean into our intuition. And then it's like the great thing is I have my intuition, he has his, and then we sit together and then we figure it out. But I think that's actually the main thing, because we'd be like, that's actually why I can't sit in my office most of the time, because I need to go out and really feel it. And then I need to kind of consume it and figure out if it's right. And I think that's maybe back to the staying power of Johnny and Acne. It's like, for me, it's like that I keep getting reminded that he had. I don't know if he has the same thing, but it's like, but I keep getting reminded it's real and it works. And I think, but I've seen things over the years that worked for a period and then doesn't work because somebody dropped out of it. I'm not saying that the state of the world right now, a lot of brands are kind of, it's a tricky period, right? And it's also tricky because wholesale is suffering. I think a lot of things right now is also based upon trying to put everything into a formula and kind of amping it up and making it bigger. I think a lot of the brands that I see right now that might be struggling is also because they totally lost gut feeling. They lost the sense of urgency. They lost the human touch. And maybe the business became a little bit bigger, or the plans for the business became bigger. But I also meet a lot of people where that didn't play in over the last 5-6 years. And maybe the bubble of Corona, where people made a shitload of money, they didn't make that the trajectory going forward. And if that's the case, then they might not be so concerned. But so I think, for me, the short answer is gut feeling, but that can also go wrong. But and sometimes it does. But if you undercommit and overdeliver, then maybe the part of it that might go wrong, you will catch up on and then reiterate the plan a little bit instead of diving fully in on untested waters as well.
Yeah, how did you learn to trust your intuition?
To trust it enough times and seeing that it didn't go all wrong. and then I think
trial and error,
and then I mean, just a lot of hard work, because and it's also okay to do it wrong. I mean, it's like, but I think from a client agency perspective, I think the main thing is just that if people felt that we definitely invested everything we had in it and all of our time and all of kind of our personal commitment, then it's also okay to do it wrong because you learn something from it. But if you just came up with it and then abandoned ship and then let them kind of sink themselves, then obviously you're not going to be getting invited back in. But the main thing is a lot of our projects and our relationships and our clients we've worked with for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. And some of the people we work with today is also built on relationships that we built before that as well. So I think we must have something that is kind of worthwhile, the staying power in that as well, even if not everything became a major success.
Yeah. What inspired you specifically within music? I know that you're like a rock and roll fan.
Yeah.
Is there something about that mentality that kind of became a fundamental part about how you think creatively?
I think what's great, I mean, I'm not like philosophical on music. Maybe if Frederik was here, he'd be a little bit different to that, but we love the same thing. But I think what's great about music is just that it also takes kind of track of time, and you might be into something in a different period, and you might, I mean, album number 10 might be totally different over time. I think everything from the Beatles to Metallica to like Bruce Springsteen changed over time, and sometimes the audience like it or dislike it. But I think it's very much kind of it's a sound of what goes on in the world, or like what's maybe you bring in some things that might be more modern than others. And I think that's interesting because it becomes this melting pot of things. So I like that. I definitely like that in the music. And then the other thing I like, which is, and I'm a huge Springsteen fan for all the things that I can think of with him. But one of the things, and I was talking to my wife about it yesterday, is just that he has this thing where he's rarely, I mean, he's been over the years when he became a bit older, but he's rarely kind of ill, and he's never kind of felt like stress. He's had depression, but he never felt stress. And the main thing, what he says about that is that he works so damn hard that it's like he burns all of his energy throughout the day and the night when he performs, that he's so fucking tired when he goes to bed. He doesn't have time to get stressed out because he put his head on the pillow, sleeps. Next morning, he wakes up. He might be kind of, the body might have a bit of bruising from the night before playing all night, but he just gets back up on, and then he goes to work again. And I like that mentality from music, that it's a lot of hard work. And if life-work balance is the part of that entire stretch you do in a day, then I don't feel that we miss out on anything. Then actually we work our ass off, and at the same time close the office on the 20th, and we opened it again yesterday. So we also take long breaks, and we want our team to do the same. We also force them to go on 3 weeks of summer vacation. They get off on Easter. Like we give them, we pay for all those benefits with them as well, so they don't have to use their vacation for it, just to make sure that they rewind and get energy back. And then they're going to work their ass off when they come back into the office as well.
Yeah, it's kind of a push and pull between like giving yourself the space, because I think being creative, you have to allow a certain amount of space, or at the very least doing something outside of your comfort zone, like just being in the office.
Yeah, exactly.
But then also just periods of just like working until, endless hours of the night if you're like really grinding on a project.
Exactly.
You kind of need both of them.
Exactly. Totally. And I think the older you get, you need a little bit of, you need some time to, Frederik and I, we run a lot, and it's like, and now I started like just training even more, but it's just like, you need your mental and your physics balance as well to be in tune, because that's the problem with the long nights. It's like that you feel it a little bit differently when you get older, and then you have to figure out what works for you. I think if there's one word, there's like two things, and maybe if you listen to what we talked about, there's like two things that keeps being important for us, and it's in various forms, but calibrating and recalibrating is always important for us, because that has something to do with that we love the word modern. And if I go back and look at most kind of strategies we've done, modern is a reoccurring word, and it's not the sense of that it's modern in it's kind of shallow way. It's just that modern means that you look at the world and you figure out if you're in tune. And I think that's what's important for us, is being important to be in tune, but to calibrate against the world, so that we keep calibrating and recalibrating all the time with everything we do, because that ensures us that we're right in time in that sense.
Yeah, keeping your finger on the pulse is kind of an important part of the process.
Yeah, and maybe that's the answer to when people come to us, is like if they need calibration or recalibration.